Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to this latest in our series of webinars on Finance and Accounting Apprenticeships. My name's Jodie and I'm from the Solent Apprenticeship Hub. We are an impartial advice and guidance organisation there to speak to individuals and employers around all things apprenticeships. Now, as things are during this time, we are working from home and trying to provide the best service we can. So please do forgive us if you hear dogs barking or if you hear children shouting in the background. Unfortunately, that is the way it is at the moment. Now, today we were due to be joined by Dan from Eastleigh College. Unfortunately, we're having a little bit of an issue with his internet. So I'm going to step in, but please do forgive us if Dan pops in and pops out. As soon as he's able to take over from me, he absolutely will. Luckily, it's one of the subjects I know something about. If we were talking about engineering today, then I could have been in trouble. But today we're talking finance and accounting. So let me take you through. As you'll be aware, finance is something everybody uses. You will find every employer all over the country, all over the world has a finance department or someone that does the finance. It is all about the money. It's one of the largest sectors, certainly in the local area, because of exactly what I said. Every employer will have someone that deals with the money. More than 2 million people in the UK. And it's an industry that traditionally has dealt very well with school leavers, with people coming in on an apprenticeship, and also for graduates as well. It's a huge sector for graduates. So essentially the finance sector is split into 6 key areas: banking, real estate, financial planning, insurance, investments and pensions, and accounting and finance. So I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail about what each of those does. Now, what I will say is the postman is about to knock my door. So if you hear the dogs barking, please ignore it. Banking is obviously one of the largest and the most well-known sector. You all know those banks that we all deal with, whether it be Barclays, NatWest, HSBC. But essentially, it is for individuals. It is for individuals to set up loans, mortgages, and your actual savings and current accounts that we all use to pay our bills and everything else. Real estate. So obviously, people buy and sell houses. They buy and sell business properties. There is a big chunk of people that work within the real estate market. And that could be people that are investing in real estate, whether in the UK or overseas, or actually people that are buying and selling that as their business as well. Financial planning. So that's essentially the strategy behind the money. So where to invest, how much to invest, when to buy, when to sell. There are organisations that essentially do exactly that throughout their business. Insurance. So we all would have come into contact with an insurance company, whether that be to insure your car or whether it's to insure where you live. Essentially, an insurance company will look at something and say, right, worst case scenario, if that burnt to the ground, how much would it be to put you back in to a property at that cost? And then finally, investments and pensions. These are the people that hopefully give us all a good retirement when the time comes, but essentially invest money to make money so you have a good pension at the end of it. And that can be not only for pensions, but other investments as well. So essentially the accountancy and finance sector brings all of that together. 2 quite different aspects though. Accountancy focuses on the day-to-day, so the money in, the money out, and whether that be with an individual, with a large financial institution, or actually with a smaller employer, all comes into accountancy. And then we've got finance, which is slightly different, and it focuses on the management of company assets, liabilities, and planning for future growth. So there is a key difference there. So with apprenticeships, you have 4 key levels. So we have what we call the intermediate and advanced apprenticeship. So that's at level 2 and 3. Then we have the higher apprenticeships available at level 4 and 5. And then we have the degree apprenticeships available at level 6 and 7. We're going to focus on levels 2, 3 and 4 at the moment because they're the key ones if you want to be a professional in the finance or accountancy sector. So as you can see, there are up to 5 different apprenticeship standards, ranging from credit controller right the way up to professional accountancy or taxation technician. I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail now. So, as I was saying, an apprenticeship standard is essentially knowledge, skills and behaviours that set out for what that job actually needs. Dan, are you with us?
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Wow, technology. I'm so sorry, everyone.
No, that's fine. Look, I'm going to stop and let the professional take over.
Professional.
I've got to hear. So I'm going to hand over to you right now.
No worries. Apologies for my technology issues, everyone. My name's Dan Wareham. I'm from Eastleigh College, the Employee Relationships Coordinator. Thank you, Jodie, for teeing me in nicely there and taking over the mantle for me. So yeah, today we were to look at some finance and accounting apprenticeships. I believe Jodie's always taken care of bringing up to speed on a few aspects of the slides that we were going to cover. What is an apprenticeship standard? Apprenticeship standards are very high profile at the moment. There has been a lot of reform that's happened in the apprenticeship world over the last 5 years, to the point that the previous apprenticeship frameworks that were on offer have been removed and they've been replaced by these newly designed apprenticeship standards. These have been designed with employers, so employers came together to design occupational specific standards in order to be able to raise the profile and the skill level of these apprenticeships. Apprenticeships are very much a program of on and off the job training. Have you seen some of the previous webinars that are undertaken by the Solent Hub? They've given a good examples of some of the what an apprenticeship standard looks like. But essentially, yeah, it's a program of on and off the job training with an opportunity for you to develop what we call your knowledge, things you need to know, the skills, the things you need to demonstrate, and the behaviours what employers expect you to be able to demonstrate. And these will be developed with you whilst you're on program. And alongside your program as well, there may be a requirement for you to undertake English and maths functional skills. This can vary depending on the level. However, whilst some of you may be listening today, I'm not sure what your outcome of your GCSEs may be. Generally, to be able to exempt you from that, we're looking at grade 4s or higher, or formerly Cs. If you don't get that, it's not a deal breaker, essentially. It just means that you would have to spend some time undertaking English and maths qualifications as part of your apprenticeship as well. Once you progress and you acquire and develop all your knowledge, skills and behaviours on your apprenticeship standard, we would look to see that we have a meeting with you and your employer to see if we feel you've satisfied the requirements of the occupation. If everybody's in agreement, then we would put you forward for Gateway to what we call an endpoint assessment. Now, the endpoint assessment process is very, very new in these apprenticeships. It's very much a case of the endpoint assessment organisation coming at it subjectively from the outside. The training provider and the employer has very minimal input into this process. And the endpoint assessment is a way for you to demonstrate your occupational knowledge and competence within the apprenticeship standard you're undertaking. They will undertake a variety of different assessment methods. It very much depends on the apprenticeship standard you're undertaking, but it could be a synoptic exam, an interview with the endpoint assessor. There will be a minimum of 2 assessment methods that you would undertake for that as well. And hopefully, all being well, you'd pass your apprenticeship standard. Many of these new apprenticeship standards also have pass merit and distinction criteria as well, whereas previously on the existing frameworks, it's very much a case that you passed or you failed. Well, actually, these are really, really good now, and the fact that it recognises those individuals who go above and beyond and put a lot more effort in to their apprenticeship to achieve higher grades. So from an employer's perspective, to have somebody that's on your CV where you've passed at merit and distinction level, that's obviously going to be a very, very attractive option for them as well. So some of the roles that were on the previous slide, we'll just run through these in the accounting and finance sector. So we have a credit controller. All apprenticeships have a minimum duration of 12 months. However, some of the apprenticeships do stipulate the sort of typical duration that there would be. So credit controllers monitor and manage customer accounts, following obviously organisational policies. But the idea is to collect monies owed from customers who have not paid their accounts or maybe even reached their credit limits. Trying to minimise bad debt, but also part of your role as well is to maintain that employer relationship to make sure from an organisational point of view you can continue operating together for future business ahead. Some key typical duties there: processing credit applications, monitoring payments, reconciling, all very typical finance duties that would be involved. Also at level 2, so with the previous slide, we're looking at the accounts. This is more on the accounting side. So we have a level 2, level 3, and level 4. So the level 2 accounts finance assistant. This particular apprenticeship standard is underpinned by the a level 2 certificate in either bookkeeping or accountancy, but it's very much the entry route into accounting for people to progress on the ladder for that as well. So it's very much a case you could. With finance, it's very generic, so you could find yourself working in any sector, be it public, private, or non-profit. All organisations to survive have to have money going in and money going out. So it's really important that there's key personnel with accountancy and finance experience and skill that can be able to manage that. So typical key duties: basic bookkeeping, working with sales and purchase ledgers, recording cash, lots of data entry, which some of the more senior positions within the organisation will rely on to inform some of their reporting. Then there's the level 3 assistant accountants. There's a minimum duration of 18 months on programme before you progress towards your endpoint assessment. Very much more of a senior role, supporting internal and external customers, looking at data entry, month-end management accounts reporting, completing of VAT returns, supporting more senior members of staff with assisting in setting budgets. So organisations or departments within organisations know what money they have to spend for the financial year, etc., and things like that. Then we have the level 4 professional accounting and taxation technician. So these do progress nicely hand in hand. We have many examples from EC College perspective where students have come in at a level 2, progressed through to level 3 and level 4 for full occupational competency and securing themselves a really good career. But the level 4 technician is very much more senior position, verifying, reviewing financial information, preparing accounts, tax returns, really important stuff, particularly on the ethical side of things as well, to make sure they're compliant with financial legislation and things. And on the outside of that as well, we have a level 3 payroll administrator. Again, 18 months in duration, but as employees of organisations, everybody wants to get paid. It's a very important role, managing and administrating pay for employees and yourself, in fact, as well. So it's very involved with processing of wages, pay slips, collecting national insurance contributions, and making sure that the employer is fulfilling their requirement to, one, remunerate their staff, but also the national insurance and tax requirements that are placed on organisations as well. As I said previously, all organisations rely on a financial element, money going in, money going out, and it can really complement any business of any size in any sector. EC College has been successfully working with employers locally and nationally to deliver qualifications for many years. Below is just some of the sort of key employers that we've worked with year on year, who are fully versed in actually taking on apprentices in accountancy and finance, supporting them to give them the opportunity to develop themselves, and actually from an employer's perspective as well, to grow their talent from within and develop through there. This is just a little bit of feedback. So Sophie is someone that's known to us. some of these may be listening, so I'm not sure if finance is something I want to go into, but it's definitely a consideration. Sophie's a really good example of someone who actually tried various different avenues before she actually found something that she could really focus on and secure herself a really good career. So she left school, undertook hairdressing apprenticeships and business admin apprenticeships, but actually when it came to accountancy, she seemed to have a thirst for that. And she really was successful in progressing on and made a really good career for herself in a local firm of accountancy firm, and really progressed on. So we're really proud of her. But it just was a good example to serve to you that are listening today, that whilst you may decide on an opportunity or a defined career path initially, it's perfectly okay for you to change your mind and have a change of tactic in the future. So if you're looking to secure a career in finance accounting, what do you do? Now, the government has a really fantastic website. It's the government's Finance Apprenticeship Service website, where there are many vacancies that are advertised on there. So employers who are looking to recruit apprentices in all disciplines, not necessarily just finance and accounting, but it's a really good resource. So you can go on there, type in some keywords of types of apprenticeships you're looking to do, put a travel distance, and it will bring up all the apprenticeship opportunities within that locality. Okay, that is a really good point of reference. At anyone, it's a national website, so at any one time there can be anything up to about 23,000 vacancies on there. However, given the current situation we're facing nationally and globally, we have noticed a bit of a decline in some of the opportunities on there. But within my role within the Employee Relations Department, we have been speaking to many of our key employers who are still fully intending to look at taking on apprentices for a typical September intake, and that's really positive. So I think as we progress over the summer months, I would very much encourage you to keep your eye on the Finance Apprenticeship Service website, because there'll be lots of opportunities on there for you to investigate, have a look at. Consider things on there when you are looking at these opportunities about the distance, where it is, how you could get there. Have a look at the role, what the sort of duties are entailed. Is it something you think you'll be able to do? Obviously, the training and the off-the-job training you will receive will complement that, hopefully. In addition as well, speak to colleges and training providers to learn about the support and guidance you're able to get from them as well. At EC College, we have a dedicated department, so if you are looking to explore an apprenticeship opportunity, you want to do that. If you don't have an employer that's prepared to accommodate you, we can support you with that through things of employability skills training, looking at your CV, etc. But additionally, looking at our network of employers that we work with, typically year on year, and we can look to support and broker you out to those individuals, those employee organisations, to see if it's something that they are looking to do and support with. Obviously, the Solent Hub is a very good point of resource for you as well. There's lots of impartial information there for you, and they're very well versed in being able to give you really good advice. One thing I will say is, just adding on the bottom of the slide there, is regards to work experience. I cannot stress how valuable I find work experience when individuals are looking to explore apprenticeship opportunities. I know some schools still do run a work experience program, but some schools have done away with it many years ago. So the value that work experience brings, it does give you an opportunity to try before you buy or decide on what you want to do. It gives you really good insight into organisations, different roles, how things operate, but also from an employer's perspective, it does give them an opportunity to look firsthand at the sort of what you could potentially produce to the organisation, bring into the organisation, and actually could be a key factor in them deciding to actually take you on as an actual apprenticeship. So please, I mean, if you don't have a formal work experience program at your school, consider it through your school holiday periods and things like that, because whilst it may be a week or two, in the grand scheme of the rest of your life, it's a kind of a small price to pay, I feel. Okay, I think that's everything. So again, apologies again for coming in a bit late, but we've had a little quick whistle-stop tour of accountancy and finance apprenticeships. I hope you found it useful, and I think Jodie's going to come in and join us now, and we're going to have some time for some questions and answers.
Amazing. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, don't worry about it's one of those things, unfortunately, when we're all working from home and, internet is a joyful experience. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So all good. Right, let me start with the questions. First one we've got is, what is a typical wage for when you're starting at level 2 for accountancy?
Okay, so apprenticeships do have a set minimum wage, which gets reviewed annually every year. Currently, the minimum wage for an apprentice is £4.15 an hour. However, we work with many employers, so firsthand I know that they tend to pay sometimes above and beyond that. But it's also the opportunity that it presents. So it may be the case that you do start on £4.15 an hour, but as you become more useful for your period of training, the skills and knowledge you require provides more benefit to the organisation. You expect your wages to rise in line with that as well.
Lovely, thank you. I mean, I think you do need to really look at it twofold, don't you, Dan? I think the reality is sometimes the best opportunities can have the lowest starting salary,
Absolutely.
but often, as you go through your apprenticeship and go through the levels of your apprenticeship, you see regular salary increases. So I'd say don't be put off by perhaps them paying minimum salary. Have a look at the company, have a look at the opportunity it's going to bring, and do what's right for you.
Absolutely. And I'm first hand as well. I mean, I from personal experience went to sixth form college and I sort of fell out of that very early on because I had no intention of going to university. So why I went to sixth form college, I don't know. But I did follow the route into an apprenticeship, and the skills, the transferable skills it gave me were absolutely incredible. And whilst you go into a particular apprenticeship with a particular career potentially in mind, the skills it gives you, you actually never know the opportunities and the doors it opens for you. So never discount anything or write anything off.
Absolutely. Right, on to our next question. What would you say some of the skills that employers are looking for in a finance apprentice?
Obviously, good with numbers would be a good start. So if you've got a good mathematical background, then that would obviously help. However, with technology, when it works as well, that's not a deal breaker these days either, because we have spreadsheets and lots of management information systems that will do that for you. So I think from an employer's perspective, it is very much a case of a willingness to learn. Being able to communicate effectively is really important, particularly in a professional environment that you're going into. Being able to communicate with a variety of different stakeholders, be it internal customers, your colleagues or clients, etc. Those types of things are really important. Those are really core skills that you've been crafting, developing throughout your education are probably more important. The aspects around the stuff, the skills and knowledge and behaviours with the apprenticeship, that can be taught and delivered to you. But there is going to be a real need for things like communication, desire to learn, some resilience as well. These can be really high pressure roles. So there's a requirement for potentially people to have the ability to be resilient and work under pressure and things like that.
Makes sense, Dan. Next one. What are some of the employers that regularly recruit? I know you put some up on the previous slides before. Is there any others that you can share with us that, particularly like finance apprentices?
I mean, those are some of the typical ones, but as I said previously, finance and accounting apprentices can complement many organisations. So Imperial Cars is someone we've worked with for a good few years now. They really like what we do and what we deliver here. However, they're a car dealership, etc. So you wouldn't automatically think. So if you are looking to explore apprenticeship opportunities in accounting and finance, I wouldn't necessarily, if there's no opportunities on the Find Apprenticeship Service website, or training providers don't have opportunities, and it's something you want to do, and you want to do that off your own back and try and be a bit more proactive in your approach, think outside the box and think about different organisations that you're walking past in the high street, etc., because they all have a finance function. So bear it in mind. Speculative approaches, chance approaches are quite often a good opportunity. We had an apprentice, whilst it wasn't in accounting and finance, and he was actually working a part-time job at McDonald's drive-through, and a van came through the drive-through, and just by chance he asked if he would take him as an apprentice or could have some work experience, etc. And took him on. He's
Love
living
that.
dream at the moment, so absolute chance meeting. So you've got to take these opportunities where you can get them.
For sure. And it probably leads quite nicely on to the next question. So someone's asked, are there many employers still recruiting during the COVID crisis?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the employers that was on the screen there, Arlington, they are going to have a couple of opportunities going live via our website on the Government Finder Apprenticeship Service website. So they are looking for a couple of opportunities, and a couple of others employers are. So, we have spoken to many of our employers during this difficult period from a college perspective. The intention is still there. The appetite for employers is still there for apprentices. It's unprecedented times. It's nobody's fault. It's something we have to live with and we have to work with. But absolutely, there's still an absolute appetite for employers to take apprentices into the organisation, grow their talent through that route.
Yeah, I think what I'd add to that is, you look on Find an Apprenticeship now, and there still is, a good 200 vacancies on there at any one time. So I think people assume that the world has stopped because of COVID. And the reality is, we are not seeing as many vacancies as we normally would at this time of year. But as we're seeing lockdown ease, things open back up, the vacancies will go up. And, I'd agree with Dan. Certainly there are a lot of employers out there that perhaps have delayed recruitment for a couple of months while we get out of this lockdown. But what I'd say to anyone thinking about applying for an apprenticeship, use this time now to perfect your CV, perfect your application, make sure that it's A1, and that time will not be wasted. You will stand out from the crowd. It is a competitive market. Apprenticeships are competitive. You are applying for a job. So anything you can do now that will add value to that, 100% do it. Because I think give it to the end of this month, sort of middle of July, you will see those apprenticeship vacancies take a significant upturn, and you want to be the one that gets there first.
Absolutely. And I've seen it firsthand from the department I work with at the college. The applications we try and manage through the periods of July and August with individuals who have managed to secure their apprenticeships during that period. For us, it's difficult to try and manage that, but we do it. But it's very, very obvious that employers around this kind of time, June, July, August, now that they're coming to the thought that colleges and training providers are starting to manage their September intakes, or we have apprentices just coming to the completion of their apprenticeships. Actually, we need to backfill those roles, so it's really important that then they start to think about the future of new recruits coming into the organisation.
Lovely. So I've got another question from someone else. Is there a time of year where it's better to start looking for a finance apprenticeship?
From my experience, because of the work we do here at Easter College, we generally work to a September intake. So over the summer, I would suggest probably for us any time from Easter up until the summer months are probably the better time to do it. However, don't that deter you, because you can undertake an apprenticeship at any time. You can start any time, providing you're getting a period of off-the-job training from your employer, which tantamount to 20%. You could start that before you start any sort of formal training that you undertake through any college or training provider.
Okay, that's perfect, Dan. Thank you. So quite a specific question here. Do you need to do the level 2 and 3 course separately in order to gain a place on the level 4 course, or is the 2 and 3 included in the level 4?
If we're talking about the accountancy roles, then generally speaking, whilst these apprenticeship standards are very much a case that the employer sets their entry criteria, training providers and colleges will have their own entry criteria as well. Now, there are some key fundamental skills within accountancy and finance you will need to be able to master before you progress on to the next level. So things around, it may be a case of you can go and to a level 3 role without having to do level 2. But you need some real significant exposure to bookkeeping, double entry bookkeeping, various other skills like that as well. So we would assess that upon application, enrolment, etc., to make sure you are at a level where we think you would be able to cope with the taught demands of that particular element. Level 4 may be a little bit of a stretch, because we need to make sure that you have a really good underpinning understanding of some of the financial and accounting principles that exist within that. So yeah.
Actually, we've got a follow-up question. So I think this individual that's speaking now don't have any work experience, was schooled potentially abroad, and that's always been put down when applying for a part-time job. And I guess what they're asking is, could this affect my apprenticeship application as well, being as they were schooled abroad?
No, not at all. Education is education wherever you go. There are some certain considerations that we would have to look at for that particular individual, and if they want to get in touch with myself, that would be absolutely fine. We can discuss that outside of this webinar. But no, absolutely, it shouldn't affect you. The idea of an apprenticeship is for you to be able to develop yourself and learn that particular occupation and that craft. So that would be taught to you. So not as long as you have what we talked about earlier in terms of soft skills, communication, a good level of English and maths. Again, if you're being educated abroad, it may be a case that you're coming in with qualifications that perhaps aren't as equivalent to qualifications here in the UK. So that's where we would look at undertaking functional skills in English and maths with you to try and develop those to get you to an equivalency here as well. But yeah, no, I don't think it should affect that at all.
Yeah, and what I would say is, do you know what an apprenticeship is for starting out, especially at level 2? Yeah. And if you've got no real work experience, which I think that's what this individual, was schooled abroad and has no real work experience, that doesn't matter for an apprenticeship. The whole point of an apprenticeship, especially at levels 2 and 3, is about starting your career. So it's more about your motivation, your attitudes. If you can put any relevant stuff in there, like, for example, I organised my brother's or sister's birthday party, just to sort of show those skills and those different attributes that an employer might look for but aren't evidenced by a qualification or things like that. I mean, I think Dan and I both recognise, certainly when I was younger, it was quite easy to get a Saturday job. But I think now it's so much more difficult. And employers recognise this and acknowledge this and don't have an issue with taking on someone, especially on an apprenticeship, that doesn't have that on their CV. So I would say, pull out those skills that you've got, 100% you've got. Just make sure they're more visible on your CV. But ultimately, the lack of work experience will not affect your application for an apprenticeship.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we've got one more question. What can you expect in an interview for accounting roles?
So in terms of an interview from an employer's perspective, they would be keen for you to understand accountancy and finance in more depth, but not to the degree where you're going to have extensive knowledge in it. Definitely a desire to be able to work in the organisation. One of the key questions quite often is they'll ask you, what do you know about the organisation? So that's always a good time if you are preparing for an interview for an organisation. Take the time to research what it is they do. Whilst it might be for a finance or accounting apprenticeship, as we said before, that could be a very small part of the organisation. So actually their operations and what they do, if it's in manufacturing or engineering, etc., actually spend a bit of time to understand what it is they do. So when they ask, what do you know about such and such, you can articulate and say, show that you've done some research on it. But you can be expected to ask about, you can have potentially different scenarios. What would you do in this situation? How would you deal with maybe an irate customer, or etc. So there can be various different permutations. But whilst you wouldn't be expected to be able to deal with that, you'd be expected to actually follow a certain process, which, following the company organisational procedure in how to deal with that.
Lovely. I think that brings us to the end of our Q&A. I think we've answered all of those questions. What I would say is, if there is certain circumstances that you'd like to speak to either myself or Dan about, our email address is on there. Follow us on social media, go on our website, solentapprenticeshiphub.com. We will set up either a Zoom call, a phone call, an exchange of emails, whatever's easiest for you. We can take you through some of your individual options, what's available out there. And if, Eastleigh College is right for you, we'll refer you over to Eastleigh. Dan will be able to speak to you about the specifics, what they've got available at Eastleigh, and how they do it. And we can answer all your individual questions. Presentation and the recording of this will be available on YouTube, on the Solent Apprenticeship Hub YouTube channel. But all that's left for me probably to say is, please make contact if you need some help and support. We're always more than happy to help. And thank you to Dan for those excellent questions and presentation. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, everyone.
Without further ado, that's probably us done. Thank you very much and goodbye.